I don't believe in hitting children.
On March 17, 1942, John Wayne Gacy was born to an alcoholic father in a rough neighborhood in Chicago. Growing up, Gacy faced mental and physical abuse from his father, and witnessed that same abuse to his mother and younger siblings. Because of a heart condition, Gacy couldn't always play with other children at school, which alienated him both at home and in the classroom. His father saw this loneliness as failure and blamed Gacy for being worthless. Beginning in his early teenage years, he began to struggle with his sexuality, and unable to share his feelings with his father or any friends, anger and confusion began to control Gacy's life. After he finished high school, he moved to Des Moines with girlfriend and future wife Marilyn Myers. He got a job working for her family's Kentucky Fried Chicken, where people say he was often pleasant and always seemed happy. Not long after, he divorced and remarried to Carol Hoff. With her, he had his first child, a boy, as well as becoming the stepfather to her daughter. He then became a self-made building contractor and got involved as the Democratic precinct captain in the Chicago suburbs. He was very well liked as a husband and father who would often organize and host neighborhood gatherings. Around this time, he began dressing as Pogo the Clown for parties, fairs, and fundraisers. While dressed as his alter ego, he spent a lot of time with children whose parents put a lot of trust in him. He was a well-liked member of society who was involved in politics and in the schools. While Gacy's sexual struggles still filled him with shame and rage, he began to act on his urges. He spent many hours of his day following around children or finding any reason to have conversations with young boys. In 1964, he was rightfully convicted for sexual assault of 2 teen boys. He was sentenced 10 years with parole. While on parole in 1970, he was arrested again for the sexual assault of another teenage boy. However, the charges were dropped because the boy did not show for trial. This was later found out to be because Gacy had hired 2 other boys to beat, threaten, and spray him with mace, forcing him to stay back from the trial.
On January 2, 1972, Gacy picked up 16-year-old Timothy Jack McCoy from Chicago's Greyhound bus terminal. After taking him on a tour of Chicago, he then drove him to his home, saying that he would drive him back to the station in the morning. According to Gacy's later account of the murder, he awoke the following morning to find McCoy standing in his doorway with a knife in his hand. Seeing this, Gacy attacked the boy, stabbing him to death. He then went to his kitchen and saw the table set for 2 and an entire breakfast made. It was just an unfortunate mistake. He buried him in his crawl space and covered the grave with concrete. He later said that he felt drained from the killing, but did feel a sexual release. He also said, "That's when I realized that death was the ultimate thrill." In the mid-70s, there were several more accusations about Gacy sexually assaulting young boys. Police began investigating him as boys started to go missing. The boys worked for or had worked for his construction company. Not long after his first murder, 15-year-old Robert Plest went missing too. Plest was last seen by his mom when he had left to meet Gacy for a potential job. The killings gave Gacy a sexual release that he had struggled to find for years. Because of this, he couldn't stop. Boys began going missing almost every week. After stabbing his first victim, he found his weapon of choice. He strangled the rest of his victims with rope, sheets, or even their own clothes. He began dumping their bodies in the crawl space under his house before hiding them with cement. On December 21, 1978, John Wayne Gacy was finally arrested. Between the years of 1972 and 1978, Gacy sexually assaulted, tortured, and murdered at least 33 young boys aged 8 to 18. When police searched his house, they found 26 bodies covered in cement in the crawl space, 3 bodies found in other parts of his home. Because there was no room left in the house for more bodies, the remaining bodies were dumped in a nearby river. Gacy was sentenced to death on March 13, 1980, for 12 of those killings. For his last meal, Gacy ordered a bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken, a dozen fried shrimp, French fries, fresh strawberries, and a Diet Coke. On the morning of his execution, a crowd of over 1,000 people cheered. He spent 14 years on death row before he was executed by lethal injection at Stateville Correctional Center at 12:58 a.m. on May 10, 1994.